I'm Sherilyn Skolnicki, and this is Brilliant Balance, the show for working women who are ready to shine. Each week, I bring you ideas, inspiration, and insight on balance, business, and getting it all done gracefully. You ready? Let's be brilliant. This is episode 274, Live Healthier and Feel Better. And today we are kicking off the Get What You Want series on the podcast. This is a 4-part series, at least I think 4. I have 4 parts planned so far. That's rooted in some input that you shared with me about what it is that you want, both recently. So just a couple of weeks ago, I asked the question, tell me what you want. What do you need help with this year? And also more generally, the trends that I see when I look at women who are reaching out for coaching support. And I think about those conversations that we have with them to kind of get the ball rolling and really understand what is it that is not working and what are they trying to do. I looked at the trends and the themes across the issues, and there are several that sort of pop to the top, but one of them is particularly relevant at the new year. And try though I might to avoid this topic and to keep this one out of the content, it really is the thing that is top of mind at the beginning of the year. And that is this notion of what do we need to do to live a healthier lifestyle so that we can feel better? And I think for our community, for the women who listen to the show and the women that I have the opportunity to support and advise, the focus really is on feeling better. It's on having a high level of energy that is sustainable throughout the day, throughout the week, so that we can go do what we're meant to do in the world as individuals, as members of families, and as people who have a professional contribution that we want to make in whatever industry that's in. So I think the emphasis that I hear from all of you when you talk about this, and again, it was really fun in the last week or two, I've had the chance to listen to voice messages from you on the line that we shared, as well as text messages from you. And so to hear these things in your own words is really very compelling and very powerful. And it just reminded me again that the focus is on how you want to feel. And I'm contrasting that, of course, with how do you want to look, right? We all want to look great. Looking great is like part of our culture. And I think there is this very strong look good, feel good, symbiotic relationship, right? I think when we look good, we feel better. But the emphasis is on feeling. It's on wanting to have a strength, a vitality, a vibrancy to life. And so when you look at what laddered up to this for me, there were a few habits and practices that I think we tend to focus on wanting to start or increase or strengthen to get there. And those are things, so it shows up as like, well, I really want to eat healthier. Right? I want to pay more attention to what I put in my mouth and how that makes me feel. I want to exercise more. Some of you are very explicit about I want to lose some weight. And again, that's not everyone. But if that is on your mind and you know that that's something that will move the needle in terms of how you feel, I think that has shows up at this time of year a lot. Some of you are focused on wanting to quit a bad habit that is impeding your energy or your health. And so there's a lot of different kind of ways into this territory, but I think we're going to have to go here. And I'll just say this. If you, like me, are someone who can get a little trippy about this topic, like if you hear conversations about this and it makes you feel like, God, I should be changing something. But actually, deep down inside, you don't need to change anything at all. Like you're doing just fine. Then skip this episode. Come back next week. Because this episode, I'm going to get into some of the stories we tell ourselves about why we can't. And if you're already doing it, if you already have a vibrant lifestyle, then there's nothing else you need to change here, right? So this isn't about finding that last 5 yards of change. This really is an episode for people who are like, it's just time for me to get my arms around this so that I can experience the benefits of what it feels like to be living a healthy lifestyle day in and day out. Okay, this topic tracks with, by the way, the top New Year's resolutions in America. So if this is you and you're focused on this, I suspect it will be quite a lot of you. We're going to get into it today, but important to note, not everyone needs this. In fact, some of you would be better served by just skipping this and moving on and going on about your day. So here's my take on this topic. I think that there is absolutely nothing that I could tell you about what to do to live healthier and feel better that you don't already know. Okay. My belief is that what to do for an educated, mature audience of American women, which is largely the people who are listening to the show, you know what to do. What to do is absolutely straightforward, right? You could probably write a magazine article, a book, a blog post on what to do. So you know that if you want to feel better, there are a handful of practices that kind of sit at the epicenter of that. There is sleep, which we always start with food and exercise, but I personally know that sleep is the foundational practice that actually enables us to find the motivation and the energy to exercise and gives us the willpower and the cognitive clarity to make good food choices. So sleep is like sitting at the foundation. Then there are the food choices. And I think that the choices we make about food probably have the biggest impact on how we feel day in and day out in terms of our overall vitality and vibrancy. And just maybe even like our integrity. Right? Because we know that there's sort of like, I know what makes me feel good, but I'm not doing it. And the piece that goes with food that I think we look past a lot is hydration or our water intake. And I'll talk about that as we get into this episode, but I think it's probably the most overlooked practice that connects us to feeling alive, awake, and energized. We tend to think, oh, I need caffeine or I need some food if our energy dips. And often what we need is simply water or some other form of hydration. And movement is a big deal, right? Movement as our ability to just keep energy moving through our bodies and to have a sense of strength and flexibility and stamina, like all the things that movement leads to. When we become increasingly sedentary and we kind of have that wake-up call that, gosh, most of my day is spent sitting in one spot. If that's your lifestyle, if you have a job where you spend a lot of time sitting, and if you look at the way your life is organized, maybe you're working from home these days, like many of us are, by the time you get up and go through whatever your morning routine looks like and you get to your desk, how many steps have you really taken? Potentially not that many if there's not a conscious decision to move your body. And then if you stay there for most of the day, and if your lifestyle doesn't involve a lot of like moving from place to place, it's pretty easy to have a day where you just haven't moved very much. So I think for some of us who are living in careers where we use our minds more than our bodies is how I'll say it. And I think that's probably many, many of the people listening, if and myself included, if we're in a career where we're mostly about using our minds, then we have to be really conscious about where we use our bodies. So sleep, hydration, the food we feed ourselves, and the way we move our bodies. Like we all know that these are the 4 core practices. The question is not really about what to do, is it? The question is, why aren't we doing these things? And I think that there are a range of reasons. We could call these excuses, right? We could call these reasons. It just is they're 2 sides of the same coin, right? Why are we not more consistently doing these things that we know keep the human mechanism that we live in functioning optimally? And so I thought about what are some of the stories, the reasons that I hear the most often, and you might find yourself in these, right? And so the answer to how you move forward, how you get to a place where you are living healthier and feeling better is all about confronting these stories about why you can't do it. So I think across the board, just holistically, collectively, right, we just have so much to do. There are so many things that we are doing in service to other people, our companies, our parents, our kids, our spouses, our friends, like so many things that we are doing for other people that we can end up in this story where we have no time for ourselves. And all of these practices start to feel like things that we are the only ones who will benefit from. So they're really easy to cut, right? We have all the kids' activities where we're the taxi service, work takes all of our time. We're busy taking care of our households. Everybody needs us. So these things that we correlate to taking incremental time, like if I say, okay, you need to get more sleep, or we need to get time allocated to movement, right? Or we need to have time to buy the food that we're going to cook and then cook the food and then clean up that food. All of that starts to feel like, oh my gosh, who has time for this? Because I think the number one thing across the board is we're just saying, I just don't have time. I want more time available to me so that I can invest some of it in these things that would make me feel better, but I can't figure out how to get the time. So if that's you, I'll just tell you, you are not alone. In fact, you're sitting in like the number one reason that I would say the women I cross paths with say this is just so hard because there's so much to do competing for our limited time. And then I think there are some stories that are specifically related to the individual practices. So I'm going to talk about those. I'm going to look at them separately. Sleep as the first one, because I told you I really believe this is foundational. Food, I'll just call it that generically, and then movement or exercise. And I want you to listen for where do you find yourself in the story? Because the answer to how you get to the other side of this is all about confronting this story and figuring out like, how are you going to double click on this? How are you going to solve for the particular thing that's in your way? And that, my friends, that is my focus as an advisor, as a coach, as a mentor. Like that's where I focus with the women I work with is let's just really get to the nut of it. Let's get to what is the thing that is keeping you from having this element in your life that you want. And let's go solve for that together so that you can have it. Because these things are solvable, but they don't solve themselves. They require sometimes someone to see it from the outside for you to be able to kind of go, oh, there is a way that I could try this differently that might get me a different result. But when we're so busy and we have so much to do and we're not thinking, it's hard to even get there, right? It's hard to even get the headspace. And I fully acknowledge that when we are running 100 miles an hour all day, who has time to even think? So I want to take a little bit of time to think with you today. So when you think about sleep, if this is an area that you're struggling with, and I did for a long time, I robbed myself of sleep. If might have heard me say this before, I used to kind of famously say, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Right? I have so many things I want to do and that I like to do. Who has time for sleep? Right? Which is absolutely backwards. And when I look at how many years I robbed myself of having enough sleep, in my 20s and my early 30s, and I look at how much things shifted when I started to just flip the whole thing upside down and prioritize sleep, I now know that this is possible. Okay. But there are a lot of things that get in our way. The biggest one I hear is I like to stay up late because it's the only time I have for myself. So when we are giving so much of ourselves all day long to other people, then that time when everybody goes to bed, right? The kids are in bed, maybe your partner is either asleep or doing their own thing, and you have that little bit of time and the lights are dim and you get to do whatever you want, right? That is delicious. That is enticing and tantalizing, and it can cause us to stay up late because we're not thinking about when it's time to pay the piper in the morning, right? When that kind of comes home on the other side and we're exhausted and we don't want to get out of bed and we're hitting snooze and we're skipping the workout. We're just thinking about how delicious it is to have that little bit of time that we can do whatever we want. So that would need to be re-engineered if we wanted to get ourselves to bed earlier, right? Because I am not here to say you shouldn't have time to yourself. Quite the opposite. I want you to have some time for yourself. I just think when it's happening really late at night, it has a cost that we're potentially looking past. Probably the second thing I hear is someone else wants me to stay up late. Like if the time is not for yourself, it could be that your spouse, your partner is saying, hey, this is time for us. Like I want you to stay up late because I want you to watch the show with me, or I want to hang out with you. And that notion of someone feeling like we would be letting someone else down or disappointing them is another thing that I hear a lot. And the third one is probably I have too much work to do. Like that is my catch-up time. In order for me to shut my workday down at a decent hour, I need that third shift. And so, a lot of you, I think, are in the pattern of I go to work for the day, wherever that happens. Then I get into a parenting zone and I am hardcore parenting until the kids go to bed. And then I have to do the rest of my work because there was this overflow that didn't fit into my workday. So again, these are the reasons I hear the most of. Now, there's reasons that sleep is interrupted, like if you have children who get up during the night, like young, baby children who get up during the night. I hear a lot about spouses snoring and that interrupting sleep. There are a lot of conversations, especially with women in their 40s and 50s, about hormones, perimenopause, menopause, sleep interruptions, and then a lot about anxiety. An inability to fall asleep or stay asleep. And we kind of wake up with our minds racing, and that all impedes sleep. And then there's this whole realm of stuff around the lure of entertainment and technology. So, the addiction that we have to our phones, the really deep psychology of something like Netflix, which just keeps pushing the next episode to you, is making it hard for us to stop, right? We're so easily entertained. It's so accessible and literally designed to keep us consuming that it's hard to consciously turn it off and be like, it's time for me to sleep. So if any of those things are connecting for you, if you're finding yourself in any of those stories, I will just tell you every single one of those are things that are solvable. Some easier than others, right? But there are ways to protect for the amount of sleep that you're getting if any of those things are in your way. And I just want to echo today that it is absolutely worth it to learn the ways to push through those because the benefits are so substantial of being fully rested when you wake up in the morning, right? Of not having brain fog, of not being sort of scattered because you can't think straight because your brain is tired. There's so many benefits to having the mental clarity and the physical energy that comes with having had a full night's rest. So I think this one is really worth putting some thought into if you haven't before, because there are ways to address these challenges that get you to the other side. Hi, it's Cheryl Ann. Thanks for listening. Did you know that the ideas I share on this show are things I also can help you implement? If you want me in your corner helping you find more time for what fills you up, go to brilliant-balance.com/schedule and sign up for a free exploratory call. Give yourself this time. You'll be so glad you did. Okay, let's talk about food. Food is probably the number one thing people are, I don't know, food and movement. It goes back and forth on which one is more top of mind. And I think the reasons I hear the most often that people cannot feed themselves in a way that they know is better for them are sometimes about time, like we've already talked about, right? I just don't have time to think about what to make, to go get that food, to take the time to prepare it. I don't want to deal with cleaning up for it. It's just easier to throw something in the microwave, order in, run through the drive-through, like pick up takeout. All of those things feel easier and ultimately don't necessarily have us feeling the way we want to feel, right? There's just there's easy access to a lot of empty calories or added calories that we aren't necessarily bargaining for when we're making those decisions, but the convenience is trumping everything else. Like that, I hope that makes sense. So the no time bucket sort of leads us to the shortcuts that have an associated cost with them. Like they're sometimes inexpensive, sometimes they're actually very expensive, but they have this added cost of like, I don't really know how that food was prepared. And therefore I'm giving up control over making choices that are a little simpler and a little better for me. So time is a big one. And I think what's interesting is often what's underneath this is I don't really know how to cook healthy foods that taste good quickly, right? So I glommed a couple things together, but I think there's a skill gap that's underneath this for a lot of people as I've started to like diagnose it, because I will often say, it's actually pretty fast. And I'll walk somebody verbally through a meal that I might make. And it is fast. It doesn't take me that long to end up having things ready to go on the grill or go in the oven or go on the stovetop. And yet I can watch in someone's eyes, they're thinking, yeah, that might be fast for you. That is not fast for me. And that's true. So the one layer underneath no time to cook could be, I haven't really built skill or dexterity with how to be in the kitchen to prep these things in a way that is fast enough to fit into my lifestyle, right? So there's a pathway there to say, okay, am I willing to invest a little bit of time to learn some things that would let me do this faster? And I can have the benefit of that over and over and over again. So thinking about why am I saying I have no time to cook? I think also when people say, I don't like to cook, sometimes there's a skill issue underneath that, right? I don't like to do things that I'm not good at either. It's not fun to do things that are like, boy, this is hard. I don't feel very good at it. The results aren't great. Who wants to do that? Nobody. So something that can be underneath, I don't like to cook, is I don't know how to do this. And so that's a really like important sort of double click, is understanding what's really underneath it. Another really dominant thing I hear in this arena of food is it's about the other people in my household. I would eat, these beautiful textbook meals that are full of fresh vegetables and, lean proteins, but it's my kids, they're super picky, or it's my spouse, he's super picky. So that notion of kind of wanting to keep everybody happy and put food on the table that everyone is willing to eat is another big kind of element of why we're saying we can't feed ourselves well. And often we have to have a conversation about a method of sort of more of like a simplified buffet approach to eating a meal that allows people to get their needs met. And there are ways through this, and then ultimately, I think there's a long game to be played, especially with children, around how do we continue to introduce them to foods that put them in a situation where they're living like healthy adults, right? They're eating a variety of healthy foods prepared well into their own adulthood. Like that's kind of part of what I'm trying to impart to my children while they're gathered around my table is I'm modeling, how do I want you to learn this so that you can continue to do this as an adult? So that, the no time to cook, I don't know how to cook, I'm not good at cooking, or I don't like it, is kind of one arena. There's this whole arena around other people in my household don't like the things that are healthy. And then sometimes it's as simple as, good food tastes bad. Like there's a perception, if you're really struggling with eating well, sometimes the perception is it just doesn't taste good. I would much rather have this ooey gooey, savory dinner that feels really comforting to me. And if your mental picture of healthy is like carrot and celery sticks and boiled chicken, like I don't want to eat that either. So I think we have to be careful that the mental picture that we're envisioning when we say eating well or feeding yourselves well isn't like a deprivation-based meal. I have no desire to sit down to a plate of carrot and celery sticks, like zero. So, but I would say I really love eating well. I like eating foods that are, that are nutrient dense, that make me feel satisfied, but also not like weighed down and overloaded. And so I think there's potentially a skill, a learning pathway there that can really help make food a place where you get both and. It tastes wonderful, right? It's very satisfying. It's filling, but it's also doesn't come with kind of the added things we don't want that make us feel like garbage, right? Okay. And then when it comes to exercise or movement, ask yourself, what do you think is the number one reason I hear that people cannot do this? and you will be right, because I think this is so clear, is just I don't have time, right? I cannot make the time to exercise. And I think that I totally get that. I 100% get that. For people who do not already exercise, the biggest challenge is going to be finding the time. But here's the surprise twist. That is true for anyone who wants to start anything that they are not already doing. Full stop, right? If you're like, I want to read more. Okay, why don't you read more? You're going to tell me because I don't have time. I want to meditate. Why don't you do it? I don't have time. I want to garden. Why not? I don't have time, right? I want to go to more museums. Why not? I don't have time. Because it's like I was about to say a spurious correlation, and then you're going to roll your eyes at my nerdiness, but there's not a cause and effect there. It's not like I don't exercise because I don't have time. It's I can't fit anything else into my life. And if exercise is the thing I want to fit into my life, I'm going to blame time. But the reality is, it's really about I can't figure out what I would give up in order to move that up on the priority list, right? There is somewhere where 15, 20, 30 minutes of your day is not going to super high value stuff. And so figuring out where is that and how do I kind of move the puzzle pieces around until I find this little window where I'm going to use it to move my body. And if you can't do that, there's the opportunity to multitask. Exercise is actually one thing that lends itself pretty well to multitasking. So here's this really stupid example. If you regularly meet a friend for coffee, you could meet that friend to walk. And boom, exercise is coming along for the ride. If you regularly listen to a podcast or watch a favorite show, you could stand on a treadmill and watch that show, right? Get on a spinning bike and watch that show or listen to that podcast. So the idea of like the 2 for 1 or displacing something that you're like, this isn't really adding any value and doing this thing you want more will sort of immediately dissipate the time problem around exercise. Because I think then it comes to there's some other reason, right? We have to sort of move the time one aside and acknowledge like it's probably solvable. It's really new habits are hard, right? Change is hard. So I hear this a lot about exercise. Like I cannot stick with it. I can't figure out how to get the habit because changing this requires me to just move things in my lifestyle that I don't know how to move. Another one that I hear, if somebody is not really exercising at all and they would describe themselves as like maybe a little out of shape or inflexible, it doesn't feel good, right? It feels like you could be prone to injury. It could cause some pain or discomfort when you're starting. So that notion of like, why I don't want to start something that feels really hard. Like I want to do things that feel good, human nature. Sometimes it's, I can't get to the gym. Like if we're in a paradigm that we can only work out at a physical place outside of our home, that is a time constraint. The ability to get there can be in the way. And then the flip side of that is I don't have the equipment I think I need at home. So if we're in a paradigm where we need a treadmill or a bike or a rowing machine or weights, and we don't have that equipment, the sense can be like, I can't do it because I don't have the stuff that I need. So, the stuff I need is somewhere else in a gym, some kind of training facility, or it's not at home. So I can't do it. And these are the things that get in our way when we're trying to establish the habit. And again, I'm going to ground this in, if this is what you want, if you are telling yourself, I want to live healthier and feel better, that is the thing that I want the most. I know it would make the biggest change. And you have heard one of your stories in this episode about why you cannot get more sleep, why you cannot feed yourself well, why you cannot find time to exercise or find a way that fits into your lifestyle to move your body and exercise. We have to chip away at these roadblocks, at these stories, and find a way, over, under, around, through, if we want what's on the other side. And there's really no other way around it, right? Because it's not a knowledge gap. It's not, I don't know what to do. I don't know what would make me feel better. I would just bet anything that you do know what would make you feel better. What you're trying to figure out appropriately is, how am I going to organize my life to do it? And I am happy to help if it's helpful to have some outside accountability, some outside ideas. If you're like, God, I have tried everything I know and it's not working, maybe it's time to just ask for some help and say, I really want this and I can't see my way through it. Like, is there a way through this? The way we do that at Brilliant Balance, I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, we call it 30 Days to Vibrant Energy. It is a very simple 30-day program that is designed to chip away at these stories, to just help you rewrite them in a way that gives you what you want. It is totally focused on the exact practices I talked about today because they're the ones that matter: sleep, food, hydration, movement. And they're focused on the how. Like, my approach is I don't really have anything brand new here to teach you about the what. I am going to ground you a little bit in the why. If you're questioning, does any of this really matter? I think sometimes just having that nugget of truth to hold on to is enough to go, wow, like that's the difference between being fully hydrated and not. That's what it does in my body, or that's the difference in cognitive function on 4 hours of sleep versus 8. Wow. Having those little tidbits can be very helpful. We can grab onto them as motivation, but mostly this is focused on how do you want to feel? Vibrant, alive, refreshed, energized, engaged, right? Kind of ready to take on the day. And what do I have to do? What do I have to unlock? What do I have to kind of like find my way through? What's my block to that so that I can feel better? So again, you can get support wherever it is powerful for you to get support. If you want support from me, from my team, we do that through 30 Days to Vibrant Energy. It is an easy decision. We wanted this to be like a no-brainer, right? It is a $99 investment that is for the entire month of support with group coaching calls, with all of the content, with a ton of like bonuses in there. So if you want to check that out, you're going to go to brilliant-balance.com. That's our website, /energy. brilliant-balance.com /energy. And you can take a look at like, what are the components? The key thing here is, what's on the other side? Doing it for the sake of doing it, eating better for the sake of eating better. Who cares? This is all about what's on the other side of those choices and those changes. How do you want to feel? How do you want to move through your day? How do you want to show up for your kids? How do you want to show up at work? How do you want to show up when, a friend calls and says, hey, do you want to do this fun thing? And you're like, oh my God, I'm so tired, right? It's about just micro changes to the habits that could be affecting your sense of vibrancy. And if we can help you change those things inside of the next 30 days, look at what's on the other side of this for you for the rest of the year. Okay. brilliant-balance.com /energy. I hope you'll join us. Next week, when we come back, we're going to talk about the next part in this series of Get What You Want, and we're going to talk about money. So if you are focused on financial goals this year, specifically how to save more money, right? Spend less, save more. I have some ideas for you that are practically guaranteed to move the needle. And I'm excited to share them with you when you come back next week. So that is all for today, my friends. Till next time, let's be brilliant.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.